and welcome to Machtails from the Cantina Live. Hard to believe I'm back in my element, back here in the Wampa Cave. It's the Father's Day episode. Happy Father's Day to all you dads out there. It's been a quick, light speed month. I felt like I just got back from celebration yesterday, but I've been back for 18 days. I have a little scar on my arm from Machtails Live in Anaheim. It did not go as well as I planned, but I do thank you guys for tuning in live tonight. And for those of you wondering, whatever happened to that recording? Well, that's on Patreon. And I want to give a shout out to all my Patreon members, all my producers. Very special guest tonight, Matthew Rooney, show producer, along with a handful of other producers. Unfortunately, not enough time for them to join us on the show. But Matthew Rooney and I will be talking all things fatherhood, all things Father's Day tonight. But the Machtails Live from Anaheim is available on Patreon, along with so much other good stuff. Just released podcast episode number 76. Also, the Wampa Cave segment, which focuses on collecting. And I've dropped number 34 of Inside the Vault, which features so many behind-the-scenes stories on so many of my projects, my film projects, past, present, and future. And that's why you guys are tuning in. You're familiar with me. Hey, I want to let you guys know that later this summer, Vader Girl is going to be joining Machtails Live again, or for the first time. She was on our YouTube episode. And also Patrick Reed Johnson, John and Mary Jo Tenuto, who were just in a recent Star Wars documentary that is actually coming out, I believe, in July. So we got a hard-hitting, heavy summer ahead of us. But hey, speaking about Patreon, I got the good guy names in the good guy tin. Look at that. Hayden Christensen, just as he appeared in episode 5 of Obi-Wan Kenobi. If you're a Patreon member, your name could possibly be drawn for a prize on the show. And the drinking word of the day. Now, I will tell you that we've kind of recycled the drinking word of the day. Ewan McGregor. Ewan, every time you hear that word, Ewan, that is the drinking word of the night. Some of you might not know, Ewan had a drinking problem during the prequels. He's been sober for a long time now. I want to use this time and opportunity, since we picked Ewan as the drinking word of the day. And remember, drink only for 21 or older, and please drink responsible. I got to tell you, I love Obi-Wan Kenobi. I recently lost a Patreon member, my first Patreon member that I lost, first and only. Because I've been very vocal about the hate that the new series has received. Look, you could say whatever you want about politics, say whatever you want about religion, say whatever you want about my top 5 bands, and with the abortion rights currently in the news, say what you want about that. But as soon as you talk shit about Star Wars, what saved my life, what became a father figure to me, that is when I take the stand and I defend everything about Star Wars. But setting aside the heavy note, I would like to take this time to bring on a show producer. And remember, you could be a show producer too on Machtails from the Cantina and be part of the show. Like my new good friend, Matthew Rooney. Matthew, welcome to the show. Thank you for taking time out of your busy day, busy week. I know we kind of juggled around the time to take tonight to do this show, but this is a long overdue thing. You've only been a producer since May, but we've recently found out that we have a lot in common, my friend.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. I think that we could do a whole bunch of shows about all the stuff so far that I've found we have in common, just going through all of your back catalog, but of course, some of the most important things I think are our experiences with our fathers, and also being fathers ourselves. And so it seemed like a great opportunity for us to have a chat and to get to know each other better, and to talk about it on your show, and sort of how it relates to Star Wars. And because I also have certain feelings about the Star Wars saga and how it contributed to me growing up, and also to me as a father today.
Well, happy Father's Day to you, my friend. And I just want to dive deep into this. What Star Wars means to me when it comes to being a father is, took his own my father took his life when I was 7 years old. And it wasn't until I was trying to figure this out as a teenager, like what happened to me? Where am I going to go with the rest of my life? I didn't even know what happened to my dad until a couple years later after that. 94 was when I found out. And I found myself relating to and quoting Star Wars like I've been quoting Star Wars randomly since 1992. And I remember I sat down with my grandparents and I said, how did my father die? Like Luke did to Aunt and Aunt Beru and Uncle Owen. And I found out that way that he, unfortunately had committed suicide. But because I had this void in my life, Star Wars was the device, the vehicle, the tool to take my mindset of a troubled youth and to kind of catapult me and move me to the next level in such a positive way. How did that work for you? I know you said that Star Wars was a big impact on your life, and growing up without a father like myself, did Star Wars have that impact on you, and how did that play a part?
Well, I think really it helped me kind of come to terms with what happened. So I wasn't as young as you, and my father passed away, but I was 18, and my father and a lot of my family has a lot of alcoholism in it, and drug abuse and that sort of thing. And so things weren't that great, especially when I was a teenager. So I kind of had to grow up, early, as a young person, and kind of do my own thing. And my father and I had a falling out when I was a teenager. I didn't see him for a few years before he passed away. And then the circumstances around his death had to do with the alcoholism and the drug addiction and that sort of thing. And there was questions about whether it was also a suicide or not. And it's still kind of unsure. I mean, I found evidence to kind of show that maybe it was an accident, but he was very troubled, and he was trying to suppress his own feelings, and paid the price for it in the long run. But for me, why Star Wars has been so special for me is because I feel like each trilogy, even the newer trilogy, it deals with sort of young people, like teenagers, sort of coming to terms with who their parents really are. I can only speak for myself, but when I was very, very young, I sort of idolized my parents, which I think many children do. But as I got older and got to be a teenager, I kind of started to see them for who they really were, and see what kind of place the real world is, and to kind of see some things that I didn't really want to see, especially with my father. And it made me question who I was and my self-esteem, and how I felt about my father. And I feel like a lot of the characters in Star Wars, whether it's Luke and Leia, who are, they're essentially orphans in the original trilogy, and they're coming to terms, especially Luke, with who he is and who his father and his parents were. Anakin, of course, is also becomes orphaned as a teenager, and he's sort of coming to terms not just with parents, but with the Jedi Order being kind of a mess, and not being what he expected. And then in the sequel trilogy, you have Ben Solo, who was disappointed in his parents, who were off saving the galaxy, and he was kind of left to go off with his uncle instead, and wasn't very pleased with them either. And so for me, I kind of watched those movies, and it helped me relate to this experience that I think a lot of people go through, where they grow up and they kind of, you see their parents in a different light, and they don't know how to deal with it. And then becoming a father myself, and becoming a parent, and then kind of seeing it from the other end, and being worried about where my children are going to go and how they're going to end up, and whether they're going to be okay, and kind of
Yeah,
realizing that I
yeah.
have to step back and kind of, because my kids are teenagers and they're kind of on their way out, and have to, kind of worry about whether they're going to be okay or not, and how much can I actually control what's going on, and how much do I have to let go? And so
Yeah, well,
Star Wars is really nice for that.
well, I think you bring up 2 points. Yeah, fatherhood is challenging in that regards. What are our kids going to grow up to be? How much can we control that? We don't want to control it to the point where it is unhealthy by any means. And there is this very strong reward to being a father, uh, especially after growing up past 7 years old without a dad. I feel like I can kind of give to my daughter what my dad did not give to me. And it's almost like, I don't know, this is maybe an unhealthy thing to say, but because my dad made the mistake, I can kind of learn from that and kind of clean up the mess that he made of me growing up without a dad, and become a better parent to my daughter, uh, because my dad wasn't able to fulfill that.
Right.
It's been a very challenging thing because my brother and my sister have I have two sisters and one brother. My older sister is from my dad's first marriage. And the funny thing is, we all see my dad on a very different level. Like my brother that was two, he can't stand my dad because he has no memory of him. And he's like, how could he do that to me? And my older sister is not as upset with my mom and my dad because she has this teenage mindset thinking about it. Like, because my dad committed suicide, and this kind of ties back into last month, Mental History Month, you're always looking for some place to, there's got to be a scapegoat. There has to be a scapegoat, and somebody has to be responsible for the instability that we've gone through. And I've always blamed that on my mom, because my mom was the one that I felt pushed my dad's buttons to lead him to that dark place. Now, everybody, even including my wife, disagrees with me that way. But going back to your comments about Star Wars, I think that's the thing about Star Wars that resonates with a lot of people, is it's more of a real life kind of film, even though it's set long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. There is some kind of level that we can relate to on a human level with these characters, because their scenarios are very realistic, and it always made me wonder about George Lucas. I know he's kind of had a private life, but it's like, man, I feel like George Lucas has kind of maybe had this similar life like you and I did, maybe with troubled, fatherhood, if you will, because essentially at the end of the day, that's what Star Wars is: troubled teens, troubled relationships with their fathers, be it Ben Solo with Han or Luke with Vader. And at the end of the day, it's always about redemption, right? Return of the Jedi, Sebastian Shaw portraying Anakin Skywalker, and he redeems himself to his son and his dark path. But I think that is one thing that makes us feel connected to Star Wars. And I think that is an example of you're cut from the same cloth that I am, because I don't believe that everybody has a deep, heavy connection to the Star Wars franchise. And you don't have to become a Star Wars fan. But I think there's a special moment and a special place when that happens.
Yeah, well, it's funny because I grew up. I was born in '83. I was my mother saw Return of the Jedi in the theater while she was pregnant with me, so I was technically there for the
You're there, yes.
theatrical release of the original trilogy, the very last one. And so, but I saw those films hundreds of times growing up. I had them on VHS recorded and all that kind of stuff. And but there's certain lines that as I get older, they mean different things to me. And actually, I relate a lot to what you said. That's my father and I at my first birthday on the Santa Monica on First Street there in Santa Monica. That's me with my younger sister who also passed away, uh, and then I have a couple stepbrothers too. But I relate to what you said, because you said you kind of blame your mother a little bit, or maybe a lot, for your father's passing, and um, I felt guilty for my father passing, because like I said, we had a falling out, and there was like a restraining order, and when he passed away, one of his relatives, I won't say who it was specifically, but one of them said to me that it's your fault, that he, and I was only 18, so it really hit me kind of hard, and I still at times I don't feel like it is my fault. Obviously it wasn't my fault, but I still feel some guilt that, like, if I had done better, then maybe things wouldn't have happened the way that they did. And so it kind of, I try to turn it into a positive experience where I use that to kind of cherish the moments that I have, and to not let things get to that point with people who I care about. And I think going back to what you said about trying to do for your daughter what your father couldn't do for you, I have the same experience, because he died so young and he put us through a lot before he passed away. I try not to pass on those sins to my own children. But like one of the best lines in Star Wars, in my opinion, is from Return of the Jedi, and it's when Luke throws down his saber and he says, I'm a Jedi like my father before me. And I think he's saying the same thing. Like, I mean, obviously Anakin was a Jedi for a couple of years before he went to the dark side, but he's sort of, doing what his father couldn't do. Like, he's choosing differently when it comes to the Emperor tempting him. He's saying no, he throws it away. And so he's kind of, taking his parents' experience and then not making the same mistakes. That's me and my father, obviously in the 80s with the glasses. But yeah, so when I hear that line now, I mean, there's many scenes in the film that I get really choked up about, especially, like, I mean, any film that deals with fatherhood, and death and that sort of thing, I get really choked up about. But that scene in particular, and then the scene on the ramp where Sebastian Shaw passes and says, "You were right about me and you saved me." Those are all very powerful moments, and those are things that I take with me, and I take them as inspiration that, yeah, we all made a lot of mistakes, and I wish things could have been different, but that's what happened, and that's our experience, and that's what empowers us to go forward and to do better, and to do good things for the next generation, so that they don't have to go through all that.
Yeah, it's funny you brought up the lightsaber moment, because that lightsaber moment was a big moment for me specifically, because my mother had had an affair that had pushed my dad to that level where, yeah, my dad was troubled before that point, but my mother had an affair, and that was the straw that broke the camel's back. And I remember when my first wife had the affair. Yes, this is Mocktails from the Cantina. This is therapeutic. This is a deep, heavy episode, the Father's Day episode. Welcome if you're just joining us. But when my first wife had an affair, I remember going down in the basement, and I was like, I can kill myself like my dad did, or I can find another way to escape through this. And that was when I got involved in the church band and started serving that way. And that was a whole different lifetime ago. I don't do that anymore. But at the time, I visualized myself holding that lightsaber like Luke and throwing it away and going, I am not going to do this like my father did, where it's kind of the reverse opposite, because Luke said, I'm a Jedi like my father before me. But again, this is the power of Star Wars, where when we quote things and when we relate to characters, it becomes a life-saving moment. It really does. And even if you're having a shitty day at work, when you're not on your game 100%, you might quote Han Solo, like, I don't know how we're going to get out of this one. But Han Solo does. That's the power of Star Wars, day in and day out. And I think that's why I don't want to get sidetracked and derailed, but I think that is what the problem that I had with the haters towards the Kenobi series. I'm like, look, enough is enough with the Star Wars hate, because this is more than a movie. And a lot of people say, oh, it's just a movie. Or they say that with baseball, it's just a baseball game. No, when it becomes a way of life or an escape or a vehicle and a tool, it becomes something that we want to protect and that we want to defend, because it's gotten us from A to Z, from the bottom of hell to facing the next day with the new outlook on life. So I didn't mean to get derailed and have that heavy moment, but you brought up the lightsaber scene with Luke, and I think that's exactly what happened. And you know what, Matthew? I want to comment another thing that we have in common. When my dad passed away in the garage, or when they found him and they pulled him out, he died from carbon monoxide because he was a mechanic. He shut the garage door. He let the fumes fill up in the garage. And my mother, at that age, I was 7. She goes, "Why weren't you in the garage with your father?"
Yeah.
Yeah, and very similar to that family member that kind of put the blame on you. Again, we have that in common. I mean,
Yeah.
I was like, it not to quote Han Solo, but it's not my fault.
Right. No, it's not. And it wasn't my fault either.
It wasn't your fault either. But again, going back to what I said earlier, when things happen outside of what we're talking about, everybody seems to look for a scapegoat and fingers to point at, because when something tragic happens, you're looking for answers, and
Mhm.
you're well. To quote Rogue One, to quote Rogue One, when Cassian Andor had said, "You're in shock and you're looking for a place to put it."
Mhm.
That was my mom. That was your family member. And again, that's something that we relate to when we watch these films.
Yeah, I mean that's very common, and I'm an anthropologist, and there's many societies that have systems set up like that, where like they know that accidents happen, but they also have systems in place where if something bad happens, it's because somebody else had this negative feeling about you, and so they have systems built in that explain in their mind and give them some kind of an explanation for why bad things happen, because it makes you feel better if you can put the blame on something, and so then you feel like you're in control of it instead of it just accidents happen and there's nothing you can do about it, which can be kind of scary at times. But I've also found with the new Kenobi series has also been putting a lot of this into my mind about Obi-Wan as a father, because Anakin says in the prequels, he's like in episode 2, I believe he says he's like my father, and
Yes, yes.
and when they're facing off on Mustafar, Obi-Wan says, "I failed you." And sometimes I feel that way a little bit with I have a son who's 15, and he's starting to go his own direction, and like we don't always get along very well, and he's going to go on his own way, and I'm going to have to just kind of let him do it and do his thing. But at times I worry that, like, what is our relationship going to be like, and like did I really do my best for him? And so seeing Obi-Wan in the aftermath of all that in this new series, and sort of being
Yeah.
beaten down and broken down because he feels like he failed this surrogate son, is really powerful, and it really expands the character, in my opinion, and makes it so much more impactful. And I especially enjoyed at the end of this 4th episode, where despite all these failures that he's made, Leia still holds his hand, and he still is there for
Yeah.
somebody to help them, despite the circumstances and despite all the mistakes he made. He can still do something good in the moment for somebody else.
Well, you brought up a really good point about him, because he said he's like my father. He says that to Padme, in Attack of the Clones, I want to say that was. And, there's, I think Anakin is that gets lost, in the shuffle, that he's the father figure to Anakin. And at the same time, it's like he, he Obi-Wan is probably the most realistic father figure in all of Star Wars characters, I think. And then this conversation is kind of making me think more about this on the fly. And, I think Obi-Wan is a very realistic father figure to Anakin, and he's very transparent, and he's very honest, and he kind of owns his mistake. Like you said, I failed you. I failed you. And I feel like the magic and the chemistry and the drama of those two characters. Darth Vader was never an evil monster. And I think a lot of fans that just grew up on the OT, like I did, and they didn't think outside the box with little Anakin, being the slave back in episode 1, they feel like that changed Darth Vader. But I feel like Obi-Wan Kenobi, the TV show, has done a great job bringing the real life element to troubled relationships. and one of, like you said, a failed father figure that Obi-Wan was to Anakin. And I think that's what makes the show fantastic. Again, Star Wars is more real than the fantasy from long, long time ago, far, far away kind of thing that it sets itself up to be during the first run. It's, when A New Hope first came out in 1977, it's a very, very real franchise. Even the sequels that people dissed on. Producer Antonio chimes in. Chut chut, boyos. Antonio, happy Father's Day to you, my friend. Thank you for becoming a producer on Mocktails from the Cantina and supporting the show for a long, long time. Matthew, I want to ask you a question. What is the takeaway from your father for you that, what is the one good trait? What is the one good memory or moment that you take away from your father?
Well, I mean, there's too many to count. I mean, there were a lot of great memories. I think, one of his best qualities was just that he was very, very intelligent, and he worked very hard, and sort of like whatever he put his mind to that he wanted to do, he did it well. And I think that was very inspirational for me. When I got out of high school, I wasn't interested in having a career or going to college or anything like that. So I just went to work for a few years and kind of saw how rough it can be. And then after the 2008 crash, I went back to school, and I ended up going to be an archaeologist. I just finished my doctorate last year. But I took inspiration from him partially because when I first started school, I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I thought maybe I'll get a bachelor's degree and I'll be an English teacher, like a high school English teacher or something. But once I got in there and I was serious about it, and I wanted to do the work and I wanted to do well, I did very well at everything that I did. And that was sort of from him, was that, like I felt confident because I was his son. And like, I felt like if he had the capacity to do those things, then I must have that capacity as well. This is a picture of me just last week at a dig over in Western Arkansas that I just got back from today, actually.
It's funny, we started the episode heavy right from the get-go that it's a Dr. Matthew Rooney. It's good that people know you're an anthropologist instead of a psychologist.
Yeah.
I have yet to have a psychologist on Mocktails from the Cantina live. It's been on my bucket list for a long time. Let me ask you this. Your father would be proud. I always like to do this. I don't do this segment enough. But to go back to my love of Rogue One, and that is the scene at the end of Rogue One. It's really Cassian's final words to Jyn Erso. And it really makes me cry and tear up because these characters are the last to die. You have this beautiful music swelling in the background, and it's the end. And he says, your father would be proud of you. What would your father be proud of you?
Well, I hope many things, but I think the biggest one would be getting my doctorate last year. My mother flew out, which she doesn't come out that often from the West Coast to visit, just because it's easier for me to go over there. But she came out, and it was a really special time. And I had never walked like in a graduation ceremony, not even like I didn't like high school, and I went on independent study, and I finished early. I didn't walk in any ceremony. I didn't walk in any ceremony for any of my degrees, but my mother wanted me to do my PhD degree and to walk in the ceremony. So I did, and which was in 2021, COVID. We all had masks on and everything, but I still walked in it. And so I think that's, so far would be his proudest moment, but I hope I do more. That would make him even more proud in my career going forward.
Now, would you say that Father's Day, because I find myself, especially with my daughter being 7, I know you're a father of 2, a son and a daughter. I find Father's Day is a very, very strange holiday to me because it is a time for me to remember my father who passed away well before his time. I know there's other people that have lost their father before the age of 7. Some people, like my brother, didn't even know his father. So there's an element of nostalgic and an element of reflecting and thinking about somebody that had passed away a long time ago. And I don't have that with Mother's Day because my mother's still alive, even though I don't talk to my mother as much as I should. But you got to listen to the podcast for that. Like Charit Emway says, "Not my friend, you must pay." But I also think that Father's Day is a time for me to celebrate and spend the time with my daughter. I know a lot of mothers. I talked to Jason Swank 2 years ago on the Father's Day episode. And, we talked about like moms maybe want to take the time off, but dads really want to spend it with their daughters or their sons. I would never imagine having a Father's Day with my daughter, not spending the time with her. Now, what do you feel the same way? What is Father's Day to you? Is it nostalgic? Are you reflecting on your dad? Or is it more of something that you're celebrating in the moment? Or is it a little bit of both?
For me, Father's Day is mostly about me and my kids. My father passed away on his 49th birthday. And so his birthday, which this August will be 20 years since he passed away, that's really the day that I take with him. So the Father's Day is mostly about me and my kids and they're here. I'm divorced. My ex-wife and I separated and split up when they were toddlers, and she remarried. And so they kind of have two dads, which at first it was very difficult for me because I didn't like them calling anybody else dad. But over the years, I, obviously recognized that he was very loving toward them as well. And so we both kind of get to be there for them. And so there's some years where I can't be with them depending on where we're all living. And so they might be with him instead, which I'm grateful for, that they have somebody else who can be there. But then, most of the years I'm able to get them because I am their biological father. We usually have it in our agreement that I will get them. And so I have them this year, and we're going to spend some time together tomorrow. This is a cool picture. So my son, his name, I named him Quinlan, which it was after the Quinlan Voss character. And this is before Clone Wars animated. This is because I was a big comic book fan. And so this is my son Quinlan when he was 3. This is at Star Wars Celebration 5 in Orlando in 2010. And this is him with Jan Duursema. Jan Duursema was the comic artist who developed the Quinlan Voss character and who I'm still friends with.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, this is them. It took forever to get this picture. He wouldn't get like look at the camera. She had to like manipulate him to look at the camera.
So this female in the photo with your son was the one that developed Quinlan Voss as a comic book character?
Yeah, so the Voss character, it's borrowed from an extra in episode 1, Phantom Menace, who's in the background in Tatooine. So they took that character and they made him into Quinlan Voss in the comic books throughout the 2000s and I guess the late 90s as well. He doesn't show up until like maybe 20 issues in or 16 issues in to that run. So it's like 2000 or so. But she's the one that, she and John Ostrander, who was the writer for that series, developed the character together. And so it was really special for me to go to come and find her at that convention and to have their photograph taken together.
What was her reaction? Because I'm sure you told her like, "Hey, this is my son Quinlan. I named her after Master Voss."
She thought it was cool. I mean, she's a big time comic book artist, and so I'm sure she gets stuff like that all the time. But she's a very wonderful person. I'm still friends with her today. Actually, I recently adopted a cat, and she helped me because she's very much loves cats, and so she actually helped me with some stuff I had to do with my cat to get some operations done.
That's very cool. And then this photo, your son is like he's focused on the camera, and she seems genuinely happy, probably because it took like 12 takes to get this perfect photo.
But I think she was excited and felt good about it that somebody liked that character that she had done so much that they would name their progeny after it.
That is a great deep cut story. Before we went live, I was sharing with you that I've been a fan of the Jedi Council since episode 1, and as soon as I heard about Quinlan Voss, before they came out with an action figure of him, I bought this really horrible custom figure, and then I was happy to replace him with the 2-pack comic character. I was actually very excited that they made a Quinlan Voss character. I'm sure you have him. And does your son appreciate Star Wars? Where do your kids tie into your Star Wars obsession?
Mostly they do. When they were younger, they were really into it. But as they've kind of grown up and gotten their own identities, they still like it. Like we're watching Kenobi together, but they don't like. I watch everything and I read all the novels and the comics, and they of course don't read anything. This is my daughter Erin. This is at Celebration Orlando in 2017 with a Hera cosplayer. So I've been to 2 celebrations and I brought them both times, and they were both in Orlando because we were living in Florida for a long time. So like I took my daughter to see the Clone Wars movie in the theater. She was like 2 or 3, and unfortunately the theater was not very full, so she was able to be a toddler in there and not bother anybody. But
At the Rebel Force Radio Bash, I was there. I was at that bash.
Yeah, we were there. We were there. Yeah, that was fun. So like all the sequel movie like all the opening nights, we went together to all those. In fact, when I was doing my PhD, I lived 2 hours from where their mother lived, and so I would book tickets down where they lived and drive down to do the opening nights with them for the Star Wars movies, and they were coming out, so we could do it together. They don't watch everything now, and my son has usually got like his earbuds in when we're watching Kenobi, which bothers me a little bit, but whatever, that's his thing, and so I feel like eventually he'll he'll come around. But they still kind of enjoy it, but they're not like I am about it. Of course.
Well, you know what? And maybe Star Wars will become nostalgic to them. I want to say Andy from Miami, Patreon member number 1, is chiming in. I would say Happy Father's Day to Andy, but he's not a father. But thank you, Andy, for supporting Mocktails from the Cantina as a Patreon member. I appreciate your support and your friendship. It's funny because my daughter, I would say she's more into baseball than she is into Star Wars. She doesn't hate Star Wars, but like you, Matthew, you were in the womb when your mother was at Return of the Jedi. My daughter was in the womb and she felt my Star Wars.
my daughter too, because so my ex-wife was pregnant with her when Revenge of the Sith came out, and so we went to the midnight showing Revenge of the Sith while she was pregnant with Aaron.
Okay, so a similar experience that you had.
Yes.
So it's again, we've heard this before. It is in their DNA, and maybe they get out of it. I feel like everybody has gotten out of Star Wars at some point. If you were around long enough, maybe like Tyler. Maybe I don't know. I feel like Tyler might have even gone out of Star Wars for a year or two. Maybe not so much with the people that grew up on the prequels, because Star Wars was a little bit more constant than, say, the after Return of the Jedi, we had the droids and Ewoks, and then we didn't have anything really until the special editions. So there was this longer gap for people to kind of chill out, disappear, and then awaken the sleeping giant later. But it is in our DNA. And it's obviously in your kids' DNA. And even if they're not into it now like they were when they were kids, I'm sure they will come around, because I have a feeling Star Wars is going to be here long after you and I leave this planet.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, and I mean, I even took a break for me in 2010 or so. In fact, I think it's similar to your experience where you kind of got really into baseball around 2009 or 2010 or so. And I
2008.
I had a similar experience where, I liked the Clone Wars animated series, but I was going back to school and I didn't have I got rid of cable. And so I wasn't watching it every week. I was watching it like on DVD, like sort of after it had all aired. And I was also a big comic book and novel person, and I was kind of burned a little bit that everything was getting, pushed aside, which I understand. But at the time I was just kind of like, well, I'm going to take a break for a few years. And so up until about 2014, when they decided to like reset all the fiction, then I came back on board with it. And like I had been a Forcecast listener, back when you were first coming on their show in the late 2000s. And so I took a break from that too, and then I came back to by then they had Rebel Force Radio in 2014, and so I've been back on there ever since. But I was there for a couple years of the Forcecast earlier on as well. But it was kind of nice because then I came back and I felt refreshed, and there was all kinds of new stuff waiting for me to look at, and so it was pretty cool.
Now, okay, so to kind of sidetrack, you roomed with us at ICC Con, which was a wonderful convention, and I'm definitely going to return to that next year.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, you weren't able to go out to Celebration with us. Did you? Since this is our first Mocktails live from, post Celebration, I need. This is a good kind of follow up question for you. Did you have any FOMO when we were down at Celebration because you were kind of part of our clan in Nashville?
A little bit. My thing is that I've been to some of these, I haven't been to all of them like you have, but I've been to, I went to Celebration 5, which, I mean, by then it was pretty big. It wasn't like the earlier ones, or at least what I understand about the earlier ones. But I went to 2017, and I kind of had fun at it, but I mostly, like, at ICCCon, it was nice because I went there to kind of hang out with you guys. I mean, I wanted to see the stuff they had as well, but I'm not too much of a collector. Like, I have all the comic books and I have the novels, but I don't collect figures and toys and that sort of stuff. And so I was mostly there to hang out with you guys. And so my feeling is that, like, do I want to spend, $1,000, which I assume it costs to fly and stay, and on all
Yeah,
the
sure,
on all the celebration tickets just to hang out, with people when I can come, to Chicago on the train for like $200 and come see you guys whenever I want to. So that was kind of my feeling about it. I mean, like, still, I wished I could have been there. It would have been really nice, but there'll be other opportunities. Like, if it kind of like usually when it's in Florida, I go because it's a little bit closer. I'm not in Florida anymore, but I still feel like it's easier trip for me to get over to Florida. So maybe I'll go to the next one if it's in Florida. It's also just with my work, and I was already going to San Diego like the week after Celebration. It was something I had to do, and it was just, there was too much going on. So I felt a little, like I wish I could have been there, but at the same time, I really couldn't afford to have gone. So
Yeah, no, it was an expensive trip, and of course, COVID wreaked havoc on our Celebration camp. So you missed out on that, which is a good thing. But it's funny. We were talking, ever since you become a producer, since meeting you in Nashville at ICC Con. We found out that we had a lot of music in common. You lived in Florida for a long time, so you had a little bit of a little bit of a thing for the Rays. I know you're a Dodgers fan because you have ties there, and our love for Star Wars and growing up without a father and being a father to you to two, me to one. You've been binge watching and binge listening so much content of mine. I am sure that you have a couple questions. just because there's so much content, I feel like you know me almost better right now than my very own brother Tyler Page does, because you are thick in the middle of so much content, from reality shows to documentaries to podcast episodes to some chats in the last matter of 5 weeks. Have all your questions been answered, or do you have a couple that are looming in your head where you're like, hey, I really want to ask Chris this to figure him out even a little bit more?
Well, I did put together a few questions for this Father's Day episode that are, Father's Day related. I did want to show, I brought this. You mentioned I lived in Florida. I was a Rays fan too, and I'm partial to the Rays. But yeah, I grew up in I grew up in Los Angeles. I lived there until I was 20, and then I went to Florida, and I lived in Florida for almost 20 years as well. And so when I was in Florida in the early 2000s, it was more difficult than to follow, or at least at the time I felt like it was difficult to follow a faraway team. So I was a Rays fan, but it was before the sort of switch from the Devil Rays to the Rays. But I do have this was a onesie that I got for my daughter when she was, so this was 2006, and she did wear this to a game. I don't have a photo of her wearing it, unfortunately, but I did take her to a game at Tropicana Field in 2006, and she did wear that. And I think you have, well, I think Tyler showed some photos earlier of you with your daughter.
Yes, when my daughter was born, when my wife was pregnant with my daughter, I was buying so much Rays gear for her, for a couple Cubs things, but mostly Rays stuff. This is actually on Father's Day. We went to the Kane County Cougars, and it's funny. I said, "Hey, let's get a photo." She's eating Dipping Dots, but she looks like I don't know what she's showing the spoon. I don't know what she's doing there. She's wearing the Rays hat.
Is there an autograph on the bill of that hat, or?
Yeah, that was That was from oh man, why his name's escaping me. He was the pitcher that pitched the wild card game in Cleveland that I was at. And Tyler, help me out here. Game who pitched the wild card game in Cleveland for the Rays in 2013? And he went to the Orioles. Why does his name escape me? But anyway, she got this hat signed in Texas when we saw the Rays and the Rangers play. And my daughter has been to 16 ballparks now. She's been to Tropicana Field 15 times. She loves the Rays. I've had an easier time raising her on baseball than I have Star Wars, because I think Star Wars is just so overwhelming to her. Like when she comes down here, she's like, oh my God. But she loves going to the baseball games. Tomorrow I wanted to go see the Cubs, but I cannot pay more than $50 a ticket for a crappy Cubs team of 2022. So we're going to go to the Independent League tomorrow. The Chicago Dogs, they're like I said, independent. They're in Rosemont. We're going to do that. I just want to be at a ballpark on Father's Day. Matthew, do you feel like you have to be somewhere or do something specific, eat a certain meal on Father's Day? Like, is there a ritual that you have?
It's definitely not in stone, but I do feel a tendency to want to like grill something like a burger or chicken or something, which I probably do tomorrow. But yeah, that's just like, it's summertime and it's sort of new, like the kids are out of school. And so it's just a nice time to go out. Like, if there's an opportunity to go swimming somewhere, we might go swimming. But yeah, I like for baseball, I'm not, I still enjoy baseball. I'm not as into it as you are. But when I was a kid, my dad, I lived in LA, but I lived like in northern LA County, and it's a huge county. And so to go to the Dodgers was like a 2-hour drive from where we lived. But my dad did take me to Dodger games when I was
getting
a kid.
Out of the Dodgers parking lot takes 2 hours.
Yeah. So, but my dad did take me, and so there's a nostalgia. And I collected baseball cards as a kid. I liked baseball cards, and so I do have that. And so like now that I'm now that it's very easy to follow whatever team you want, I do follow the Dodgers again. But I did stick the Rays and the White Sox for you and Tyler on my follow list on my MLB TV subscription.
Nice. And of course, as a Dodgers fan, you can't like the Dodgers and follow the Cubs. You have to mix it up more than that.
Yeah.
So,
well, I do have a couple questions if you want to. So I have a couple that are sort of Father's Day Star Wars related, and actually one of them is kind of deep, I think. So let's say something, and hopefully this doesn't happen, but if something were to happen to you and your wife, who in the Star Wars universe would you want to raise your daughter?
Oh, that's a good question. That is a very good question. I would say Bail Organa. Not only because I'm a huge fan of Jimmy Smits and Bail Organa. And let me tell you, while the rest of the world is bitching and complaining about Obi-Wan Kenobi, I only have one complaint. There's not enough Joel Edgerton and Jimmy Smits in Obi-Wan. But yes, I would love Bail Organa to raise my daughter, hands down. That's a good deep question, but that's an easy one to answer for sure.
Yeah, I feel the same way about my daughter. For my son, I was listing out, who are the options. So there's the Organas, there's the Larses, there's of course Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon, Han and Leia if you want to go sequel trilogy. But then we have Mando too. And I thought for my son, since he's 15, he's needs to learn how to kind of get out there and learn to trade or whatever. Maybe Mando would be a good father figure for him if something were to happen to me and his mother. So that's my answer to that question.
I think Mando is, Din Djarin is a good one because he's got so much love for Grogu. I have to say that, as little screen time that Bail Organa, Jimmy Smits has had in Obi-Wan, the relationship that they've shared with him and little Leia has been like, oh my gosh. I mean, why do they not give that guy more screen time? Because I feel like that character in itself, as little as he was in Attack of the Clones, I was like, oh my God, it's Jimmy Smits' Bail Organa. It was so powerful in such a little time. I think they did a great job with that character, and they made him a truly believable, loving, caring father that adopted the wonderful, lovable Princess Leia, for sure.
Yeah, well, I think, I mean, I don't know for sure, but we're gonna get 2 seasons of that Andor series, and I find it difficult to believe that he wouldn't be in that, in some, or especially if they're gonna have Mon Mothma. And then I think he'd at least have to have a small bit in that show. But I do think we'll probably have a lot more Joel Edgerton on the last on episode 6 of Obi-Wan, based on the conclusion of the last episode. So I think you'll get that, and I'm sure there'll be more Bail as well, because they have to get Leia home. So I have another question. So you're very immersed in the fan community, a lot more than I am, the Star Wars fan community, for many years now. Is there anybody in the Star Wars fan community that you consider to be like a father, or that's like a father figure to you?
Well, immediate answer, Jimmy Mac. Jimmy Mac, hands down, because he was there. I feel like the thing about Jimmy is he's been a fan as long as I have. We, like you, we had it maybe not as much in common as you and I, Matthew, but I've always looked up to Jimmy because he's got this community of wonderful fans that goes back before Rebel Force Radio. And even though I have not followed every word of advice that he's given me, I've probably only followed one word of advice that he's given me. I've always asked him for his opinion, and I've valued his opinion. But like a troubled teenager, like Kylo Ren, for an example, maybe, in my young 20s, I've always gone my own way and done my own thing, but I've always remembered what Jimmy has told me. So, yeah, I would think, there's Dan Matson, but Jimmy is kind of like the godfather of Star Wars fandom to me. Even though Dan Matson is the godfather, there's a special level of respect that I have for him. And I would always ask Jimmy, if going to advice, asking for advice, I'd always go to him first. So yeah, I would look at him as a father figure towards my Star Wars fandom and the fan community, first and foremost.
Yeah, I have a similar feeling. I don't have the relationship with him that you have. I mean, we know each other, and like we've done, I've done his Q&A a few times back when he first started doing it, and like sometimes we'll exchange stuff in the mail or whatever. But he, like, just as a podcaster whom I listen to without having a close relationship, he's kind of like, I'm not sure how to describe it exactly, but like when you're a kid and if you get lost or you're worried about something, and then your parents show up or your father shows up, and you just kind of feel like he's there, and so everything's going to be okay. Jimmy Mac is kind of like that. Like especially when like a Rebel Force Radio episode drops and I've been having a rough week, or like we're watching these Kenobi episodes and people are complaining about them. It feels like once they come on the air at the end of for their after show, I feel like everything's okay now, because they're gonna say, like, I mean, like, they're not gonna be all glowing about everything, but at least they're gonna treat it with an even hand, and like it's gonna be okay, and they're gonna set people straight, maybe some people that are being too critical. So I kind of have the same feeling about Jimmy as well, that he's kind of, I mean, he is like he's not, I mean, he's maybe technically old enough to be my father, but I definitely agree. I was thinking the exact same thing. Godfather of the Star Wars fan community, for sure.
I feel like we need somebody like them. There's a lot of different shows. There's a lot of different podcasts. But I feel like me, I got in trouble last week on Facebook. Like I said, I lost my first Patreon member for defending, and Tyler knows I sometimes react quickly with my feelings, and it cost me only one Patreon member, but I gained one in return. Ian Tomash has joined Mocktails from the Cantina because of my love and the defense of the haters out there. But I feel like with Rebel Force Radio, they were kind of under the same, fire. Not fire as me, because they're in a different world. They're in a much bigger world than I am. But I handled it really poorly. And like you said, they're like, okay, everybody calm down. They're not going to make everything positive and glowing, but they're going to make sure that everything is okay. I would rather see them show up to a fight than me, because I'm going to come out guns blazing, not asking questions. I think Jimmy and Jason are going to be like, "Oh, everybody calm down. Okay, what's going on?"
They're more the negotiator.
More mediators for sure.
Well, moving away from Star Wars, since there are other things out there, who are some of your favorite film dads outside of Star Wars?
My favorite film dads outside of Star Wars. Well, I got to go to George Bailey from Wonderful Life for sure, because of the suicide element and the fact that he did not take his own life and he rejoiced with his wife and his kids at the end of the film. That one definitely comes to mind first and foremost without even thinking of this. Any others that come to mind? Film dads. You know what? I was a big fan of Raising Hope. With help me out with the actor's name. The guy that was in Breaking Bad.
I can't remember his name either.
But I know Tyler knows. Tyler's busy doing his work back there. He was just on Stephen Colbert's show. God, I want to say Branston. Anyways, Raising Hope was always fun. That was a fun father figure. I did like the 70s show, but Foreman was not a good dad.
I think he's hilarious. He's funny, at least.
He was kind of like the asshole father figure.
Yeah, that's true. But he's very funny, in my opinion.
But yeah, I would think, George Bailey for sure is the one that comes to mind first and foremost. The one, E.T. is celebrating its 40th anniversary on the big screen. That was a film. Now, this is a little bit off the subject, but that was a film that I related to because my dad died in November of 82, and that came out the summer of 82. That movie did not have a father figure. It was the single mom with the brothers and the sisters, and with the brother and the sister. And man, what a relatable film, Again, it has nothing to do with Father's Day. That's more of a Mother's Day thing. But that's one of those films that comes to mind when you're like, who is the father, the movie dad? I kind of think about like, okay, I don't know if I can answer that question because I kind of grew up without a dad for the most of my life, But yeah. I guess Star Wars, again, George Lucas and Star Wars was the father figure. My mom, first and foremost, when I interviewed her for The Force Among Us and she broke down and cried, I used that in The Force Within Us, as you know. I asked her, why do you think Star Wars was such a big impact in my life? I don't think I realized that until my mom answered the question and broke down in tears, because I grew up without a father and Star Wars was there for me kind of more than her, Kind of more than her.
Well, for me, I had a hard time. I made this question and then I thought, well, I should have my own answers to these questions. And I had a hard time kind of thinking about film dads outside of Star Wars. I really like Christopher Plummer. I don't know if you watched Knives Out, which is the Rian Johnson film that he did right after The Last Jedi.
Knives Out one time, yes.
That's probably one of my I love that movie. It's one of my favorite movies the last 10 or maybe even 20 years. Like, it's one of those films that whenever I'm like visiting somebody, I make them watch it with me. I could watch it endlessly, and I like to watch people's reaction to it. But Christopher Plummer is the dad who kills himself in that movie. But he's also Sound of Music. He was the father in Sound of Music, Julie Andrews. So I like him a lot. Also, I have a weird, not weird, but I have an affinity with Tom Selleck. My dad kind of resembled, at least in my mind as a kid, Tom Selleck. Like, we used to watch Magnum PI, and I felt like he looked just like my dad. And so I used to watch those 3 Men and a Baby, 3 Men and a Little Lady movies with Tom, and Tom Selleck was one of the three
Yeah,
dads in
yeah.
that. And so Tom Selleck, I've always just like, no matter what stuff he's doing, whether it's good or not, I just like anything he's in, I just really enjoy watching him, because I think it's because I associate him with my father. And then I'm a huge like Wes Anderson. He's a film director. Fan of his films, and did a film in 2013 called Moonrise Kingdom, which I really love. And Bruce Willis plays a father figure in that, whom I really like as well. And so those are kind of my picks for outside Star Wars film dads.
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. It's a little bit difficult for me to answer on the fly. And it's funny you say your dad kind of resembled Tom Selleck. My dad resembled, and I don't know if Tyler can work up some magic about a comparison with these two, but my dad looked like Bon Scott from AC/DC. Not that I would want Bon Scott to be my father figure, but I love AC/DC. But it's one of those things. Like every time I see Bon Scott, I think of my dad, and my dad was into really, really good music. That was one of them. I had mentioned before on Mocktails episodes that my father was buried with the Dark Side of the Moon album, which is odd because that would have been on its 10-year anniversary release. I believe that album came out in 1972. My dad died in 1982. So I was raised on good music. You know what? It's funny. I want to answer a question that I don't know if I've got a chance to answer, but because it's Father's Day, Father would be proud. My dad always wanted to be in the entertainment business. My dad was a forklift mechanic. He was a journeyman mechanic for Clark, the forklift company. He could fix and build anything, but he always loved music and he always wanted to play music. And a lot of you know that I am a music aficionado / freak. My kryptonite is when the room goes silent and there's no music to be found or heard. And I spent a lot of time in the music business, which led me eventually into the TV and film world. And I think that is the one thing that my father would be proud of me doing, what he loved and wanted to do. And oddly enough, when I was a teenager, I put my Han Solo hat and jacket on, figuratively speaking with the hat. Of course, Han doesn't wear a hat, but I put that shop coat jacket on and I said, I want to be like my dad. And I failed miserably as a mechanic. Han Solo was a huge inspiration to connecting me with my dad because Han and Chewie were mechanics. They were shopmen. And that's exactly what my dad was. And that's exactly what I wanted to be because I wanted to follow in somebody's footsteps as a lost, troubled teenager. And that obviously did not work out for me. So, but I had to share that with you because I never got a chance to answer what my father would be proud of. And because it's the Father's Day episode, I had to share that with you. Matthew, we have time for one more question, and then we would love to have you back on a show next month. And we're going to have you on the show a lot more often because you are a producer of Mocktails from the Cantina. But there we go. There's Bon Scott with my dad. Tyler working quickly. Yeah, I can see the resemblance right there. You know, my dad obviously has his shirt on. He's got his George Lucas shirt on. And my dad's name was George, which I always thought was weird. It's like George mocked George Lucas. It was always one of those things. It was always looking to connect the dots of me and Star Wars. How can I become closer to this film? I don't know. You got George wearing a flannel there. You got George Lucas wearing flannels all the time. Kind of close enough, but maybe no cigar. I don't know. Matthew, any more questions for me?
Okay. Yes, I have one more thing. So
Yes.
I gave Tyler a link. Hopefully he's able to put it up. If not, I'll give it to you. On the Star Wars website, they have a Father's Day gift guide for 2022.
Okay.
I wanted you to look at it and tell us which gift. I'm not going to like order something, but I'm just like which one would you prefer to be given as a gift based on their gift guide?
You know, Tyler, do we have this available during the through the private chat? The link, because StarWars.com always does a really good job. Like, hey, it's May the 4th. It's you know, okay, what do we got? You know what? I'm going to tell you right now. If I see a rocks glass that says "I am a Jedi like my father before me," that looks like that bark box looks like if you're a dad dog,
Right.
or a dog dad, I should
Dog dad.
say. I do like that. That's kind of a stained glass kind of look there. I think that's a really cool painting. Well, I got too many watches, including my Rays watch and my Tatooine Sand watch. That looks like a cufflink kind of thing, and not in the cufflinks. I'm a T-shirt wearing guy. I am your father. Lessons for parents. But you know what? This book. I want to say this is from the guy that is Coffee with Kenobi, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
Well,
here's your glasses.
Yeah, you know what? I gotta go. Can I choose two?
Well, look at these glasses. Like, look at the text, and there's a lightsaber in there.
Oh, there's a
it says, "If you strike me down, I'll become more powerful than you could possibly imagine," and it's got Kenobi's lightsaber in it.
Okay, I want the one to the right with the rocks. That one right there. I want that one with the book, and I don't even need to look any further.
Well, I told Tyler once you saw those glasses, that would be it.
You know, I'm not a socks guy. You know, I don't even know what that is.
That's a ring.
You know, that one's cool, but that one's a little disturbing, right? That's a little dysfunctional. Right?
Yeah.
No, I am your father with like Luke screaming, no, it's impossible. The Dadalorian, that's more for Sean, but Sean's not a dad. Yeah, I would say the rocks glass. I like the rocks glass with the book, because I always like the connections to Star Wars and parenting, and I do like that stained glass art of Darth Vader. But I don't have any room. For that. But that's a really nice piece. That's a really, really nice piece. Well, Matthew, it's been great, man. It's been wonderful sharing this Father's Day episode with you. It's hard to believe that we made an hour and 10 minutes feel like 5 minutes. I think that's the power, again, the power of Star Wars, connecting people and relating people and just getting us through life, the challenges of life, you know?
Do you still have shirts for sale?
I do have I think I have like 3 shirts left for sale. I have the celebration shirts, the twins. I think I have just large and extra large, and then I have R2 serving the drinks. Not many. I think I literally have 5 shirts left from Celebration. But Matthew, thank you again for being a producer. I am going to pull the Patreon name out of here. And remember, you guys have to tune in live to win the prize. And I'm only pulling 3 tonight. And if you're not tuning in, and if you don't win, I'm gonna put the prize back. Okay, Suds, producer Todd Sedlak. Is Todd watching live tonight? We gotta watch the comments here. Producer Todd, I feel like the comments have been a little quiet tonight, maybe because it was a deep and heavy episode. Suds, are you watching? Producer, shout out to you. Sean Todd. Got to give a shout out to Sean Todd. He was somebody that left as a Patreon member because of my dislike for the Boston Red Sox. And I had told him that I wouldn't talk smack about the Red Sox if he joined again. And he joined again. I don't talk smack about the Red Sox anymore. So I sold out. But I will not sell out to the haters. Last one. John Drake. John Drake's wife joined us for the live show. the host of the Nerf Herder Council. John Drake, is he tuning in live? You guys, I want to give you guys a shout out again. Again, you could produce the show and become part of it, like Matthew Rooney, like Todd Sedlak, like Antonio from New Jersey, Michael Wistock, Kurt Holman, so many others. But at some point, I feel like I have to cut it off because I don't want to take the time away from you guys. I remember you said that you had joined a Patreon that became too big and you didn't get a chance to participate as much as you'd like to, and I really want to keep all my producers part of the regular show, I think that's an important part because you guys commit and contribute so much monthly. I mean, Matthew, people like you keep me going and keep this show going. And not only a monthly basis, but a weekly basis, Well,
I get a lot back from it. I wanted to tell you as well, because sometimes you differentiate between shows that are free and shows that we get on Patreon. But I don't see it that way. I put the money in the Patreon to support all the stuff you're doing, and so I enjoy it, and I get a lot out of it, and I'm sure we'll have lots more, great conversations. So I'm very happy to be supportive of what you're doing.
Well, I appreciate you, man. And I appreciate you guys so much. Thank you for tuning in live tonight. Mocktails from the Cantina Live will return next month. And like I said, we have Patrick Reed Johnson coming up. We have Vader Girl. We have John and Mary Jo Tenuto. I'm going to get Jimmy Mack back on the show. Damn it. I'm going to work around his busy schedule. Again, like I said, he's kind of like the fan community Star Wars father figure to me. He was the one that told me, no, if you're running a show, you tell your guests what time to be there and what day to be there. But damn it, I know Jimmy's a busy guy, so I would love to have him back on the show, and I am going to work around his schedule. So, hey guys, thank you so much for tuning in. We will catch you guys next time. Hopefully you become a Patreon member so you can join in on the weekly podcast, the weekly Wampa Cave segments that focus on the collecting, and become a producer like Matthew Rooney tonight and be part of the show. Ask your own questions. Be part of the fun and keep this thing going, which is going on 2 years and a couple months at this point. Thanks to you guys for tuning in. Thanks to my Patreon members. We will catch you guys next time on Mocktails from the Cantina. I feel my scar healing from Celebration Anaheim. So long, everybody.